Done.
Good morning, everybody. John Spiegel here from GAI Insights with your Gen AI news briefing, rating top news essential, important, or optional to save time in your busy day. In this torrent of information, we have all kinds of stuff here. We got things from Accenture and BCG, a new announcement from Anthropic. So lots to cover. Luda, let's start off with the first one, but Akash, give us the first article, please.
Good, John. Okay, so the first one that we have for today comes from Elon Musk and AI. So they have launched Grok 2 chatbots, and now it's a state-of-the-art model from XAI.
Luda, what'd you think?
Well, according to some new X folks who are trying it, it's a very powerful model, and it actually seems to be performing better than its competitors. I don't know whether anybody else has more data than I do, but because of that, I think it's important for our leaders to know that. Even though it's not yet quite released, it is in the premium folks, premium folks are previewing it and testing it. So, but it will be released, they say, in a month or so, within a month or so. So it's, I think it's important to know.
All right.
I would err on the error is the wrong word. I would go more for optional. It's a product announcement. It's not available to many people right now. So what we have is hearsay and a couple of ugly pictures of gross distortions of reality that seems to be the primary goal of X these days. Other than that,
it's just for their service, right, Tim? I mean, this is not, if I'm an enterprise user,
individual service, and you have to be a premium customer.
At the moment.
It's not out yet. It's out.
Yeah.
But well, it has. I'm okay with optional. Actually, the reason I bumped it to important is because it's a very powerful model,
right.
And they, over the period of just, I don't know, a couple of months, they bumped it in performance higher and higher. So
we don't know that. No. What we know is that a few people say it is higher performance. They've not put any benchmarks. They showed a couple of nice pictures. We really have no data.
True.
And it probably will be okay, but I mean, there are a lot of pretty good frontier models at this point. So to me, it's not targeted at enterprise leaders. It's not out, and we have no real data on its performance. So it's hard to really get excited about it.
Okay, you got me to optional. That's fine.
Yeah, Vivek asked an interesting question. Will it be able to perform competitive intelligence or other AI data related projects? Don't know yet. We're going to find out. I do think that, that's interesting. This particular thing shows some of the things you can generate that are in particularly bad taste, like a pregnant Kamala Harris embracing Donald Trump, which I found pretty repulsive. Anyway, yes, let's go for optional and wait for what's that?
Yeah, and
let's go for optional and wait for the model to come out. I won't be surprised if it's very capable. I mean, Musk and his team built the world's biggest supercomputer in a very short amount of time. So, but when it's available, he'll probably get higher rated. Adam, welcome. Good to see you.
John and Tim, I do think it's notable, though. We keep talking about frontier models being a sport of kings. Here's a sport of king entrant who, in a matter of short period of time, is still kind of potentially in the race with validation here. So it is still, we may still 4 or 5 years from now see the whole different set of, not a whole different set, but different set of models. It's really breathtaking.
It's just unclear also how this model is going to be used. Like, is there really going to be an API?
All right. Hey guys, my connection is pretty unstable. So could Paul, could you take over?
Sure. Yeah, great. I will go to the second. Akash, please kick us off here. Second article.
The second one comes from Snowflake. So Snowflake has launched Cortex Analyst. So it's an agentic AI system for data analytics.
Tim, you were signed to review this. What are your thoughts?
I think this is, on the border of important. Again, it's a product announcement. I tend to be skeptical of product announcements by companies. They tend to, be commercials for the company. But Snowflake and Databricks are the two big companies in major data management and large scale data analysis for a lot of corporations. So for the AI leader, particularly if you're using Snowflake, this is essential. If you're not, it's still probably worth a read. So I would give it an important. It's they claim they've done some work to make it more accurate than Databricks version. It's basically an LLM that makes it easy for you to ask natural language questions, and then it will translate it into SQL and find the right data. They bury in the text one minor fact, which is pretty darn important, which is you must make a semantic model of all your data before they will use this LLM for you. Which is, you have 10,000 tables and several of them have hundreds of fields. That's an enormous task, it sounds like. And they don't cite how much effort that task requires. And if you do that, the question is, do you need an LLM? At that point, you might just be able to use a knowledge graph or other mechanisms. So unclear, but still, this is an important company in this area. So I'd probably encourage being important and giving it a read.
And Tim, when I do that, I still buy more services from Snowflake, correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's why I said that the skeptical side is this is a commercial for Snowflake, right?
Yeah, but I think important. I agree with important, Tim, because this is in essence, a critical area where enterprises have a lot of unstructured data, and in fact, if that data is quickly ingested and the semantic environment is built, there's no limit to what can be achieved, right? So that's why I think it's a very important space for us.
I think it's not even so much, even with structured data, the issue is, which they cite, and this is true, I've seen this myself because I've used Databricks. Snowflake was a little after my time when I was in this world. But the problem is you have to set up something like Tableau or BI, some sort of analytics engine on top of these things. And they're great, and the visualizations are fantastic, and you get an enormous amount of data. But it's the problem is always the executive looks at it and says, okay, but what about this thing over here? And they can't get at that thing over there because it's some obscure data variable that has to go back through the business intelligence engine. So now you go back to the data engineer and the analyst and you say, well, redo this report to get this variable. And it's not very dynamic, and it can lead to lots of delays in interpretation of the data. And this is all structured data coming out of Snowflake or coming out of Databricks or something like that. So the big advantage that they cite, and if it's true, it's a big advantage, is the ability of Paul Beyer, the actual executive, to just say, tell me a little bit more about this obscure little thing over here that wasn't originally in the report. And it can regenerate the thing dynamically in real time. That's hugely powerful if they can pull that off.
And moreover, they are providing, Tim, all of those little pieces that need to be put together as a stack, right, to actually deliver on this. I think the building the symbolic engines and the like might be not there yet, but they will get there. So as a result, I think Snowflake and Databricks are really important pieces in scaling AI. So I think we should give it as important.
But keep me honest here. I mean, I understand the nirvana of we have a 10,000 person organization and we want to have data citizenship throughout the organization, and every single report request that an executive have can instantly be answered without any other IT state here. But we still got the underlying issue called I still have multiple data sources right here that are changing that I still need to keep up. I may have 10 different definitions of what a customer is. and that may or may not be solved with some of these solutions, correct?
That's right. And that's why this little step that they buried way down in the article about, oh, by the way, you have to make a semantic model. That's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
If you have 5 different versions of customer, you have to tell them, oh, this is really customer when it says, something else besides customer, or rev really means revenue, right? And all that kind of stuff. So how difficult that step is unclear. And if it's really difficult, it's going to be a real problem for this approach.
So it's important for now. One other quick thing here. I was at just left this AI Force show. People mentioned about 100 plus, I think 120 vendors that walked around. So it was an incredibly fantastic show. It was a great way to talk to a lot of vendors at once. And to your earlier point, Snowflake came up frequently. I mean, they do have a lot of usage and importance, and particularly the pricing model is something that it was at least 4 to 5 vendors the LLM vendors whose value proposition was, we help you get around the onerous Snowflake pricing model, which I thought was really interesting thing.
That's a story as old as the hills, going all the way back to the original Tuxedo, for those of us old enough to remember.
You're dating yourself. All right, that's important. Ankaj, next article, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Anthropic, and it talks about prompt catching with Claude.
So this is the continued improvement that we expect in all these models here on be able to save some caching or some information on it. I believe, I haven't spent enough time on this, but this is similar to some of the stuff that OpenAI had. I had this as optional. This was assigned to me. I had this as optional. This is a as expected type of important improvement going forward here.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's unclear. It's hard for me at this point. I don't have enough experience as an engineer to just look at the numbers and say, oh my God, this is really dramatic, the pricing difference. So I can't tell. Yeah. That would be the only issue that would make it more important. And yes, other than that, I think you're right. It's keeping up with the Joneses. It's an obvious optimization.
Adam and Luda, you guys comfortable with that, or?
Yeah, optional it is, but interesting combination that can be had between the Snowflake stuff and the need to create symbolic models. You can stuff a lot of that into the prompt, right?
Yeah.
And if you can cache the prompt, meaning save it and perfect it, then this combination might actually be very good.
If you're doing a lot of high volume transactions against the same stuff, this could clearly save you quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also if you've got team stuff, so if you can start putting the same prompt across multiple colleagues. But Ankash, if you scroll down a little bit, I thought they actually had a good chart on the input-output pricing, which is, I think scroll a little more. Yeah, right here. Yeah, so this kind of input of $3 per million tokens, output $15 million. I think, starting to slowly see a better understanding of these pricing models out there, and I thought they did a good job on that. So, an optional for now. Next article. Yeah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Just on that point, like I'm doing the exercise for GAI Insights right now around feeding all of these transcripts through the OpenAI API, and every single one of them we're paying for that same prompt that we're sending back to the model, right? So I can see there's going to be a lot of use cases where this can have a significant impact on the overall cost.
It's not only cost, guys. It's also time.
Yes. It took 20 minutes. I had to wait 20 minutes to get all the results
back. There's
back.
a latency issue as well. So you can see if you're a call center and you got lots of agents and they're really all operating off similar contexts, this could be very helpful.
Yes. I want to should bump it to important, guys.
You're making so Adam, explain a use case and what takes 20 minutes.
Well, we had to pass the request and wait for the inference and get the answer back 120 times, right? And so it just takes a little while for each one of those requests to pass the prompt back, for the API to process it, to send the result back to us. It just, you just set it running and then you go away and you come back in 20 minutes and the process is, but if you can get your results quicker, that streamlines things, to Luda's point.
Right.
So, Paul, what is happening when you feed this an LLM a prompt? It needs to parse it, create essentially an adjustment or fine tune it LLM to that prompt, right? Ingest it, and then after that's what takes time. But after it ingests it, it can spit out the result. So when you're saving the prompt or caching it, you're caching that ingested model. So that's why the time to respond next time is way faster.
And that's really good. Adam, I think your case is really important, though. So we've talked so much about, I think, the everyman case where it's a human putting a single query with a browser into the robots and getting an answer back. And Adam, you're highlighting a use case where we had 120 large transcripts, so almost a batch process that you pulled all together. And it sounds like you wrote a script for that. And that's what took 20 minutes. You could see that also happening a lot more in enterprises. Is that correctly stated?
Yeah, getting back to the conversation about Snowflake and Databricks, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the combination, because what you're doing, and you might be in that prompt saying, give me the result in the table and adjust this and do this. And so that's if you're about to use it another time, that's the symbolic engine, or semantic information about what you're trying to achieve with this. So maybe we should bump it into important.
I think we're bumped to important. All right, important. Next article, please, Ankash.
The next one comes from HBR, and it talks about embracing Gen AI at work.
I see our colleague John. Are you back on?
Yes, we'll see if I get my internet fixed up here. Of course, the worst internet's here in Silicon Valley. Only kidding. Yeah, I rate this thing as important. These are two Accenture partners who are working in their AI practice. And it really, I think the reason I rate it as important is that there's not a lot of their survey data in here, but the survey data that is in here says that the majority of people want more training on AI, but only about 5% are getting trained. And they talk about different kinds of skills. I'm trying to remember the names of them now, but basically integrative skills, and assessment skills. Pardon me?
Judgment and apprenticeship.
Thank you. Yeah. And so, I think that I was unimpressed by the kinds of cases and, any productivity data and so forth, which they don't have much of, if any. But this general thing that I think we're seeing across the board, that we have this kind of simple model of educate, operate, transform, if you want to use AI and Gen AI. And the educate part for most companies is highly, highly underinvested in, I would say. And I think there's some pretty good anecdotes and analyses of academic papers, as well as their own survey that supports that. So I would give it an important.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good survey article. It's not the greatest article, as you said, in terms of its factual data, but I agree. I think it's worth it for the AI leader, just because it's a good understanding of what it takes to get this done and what you're going to need to train, at least basic training. This is boot camp. We're not even talking about fancy stuff here.
Yeah.
We're just talking about getting everybody the basics where they understand more than just type in your command, but they understand things like chain of thought and planning and reasoning. So that's, I think, helpful. And it's a little bit of a commercial. Remember, they just bought Udacity, so they're in this business. But as you said, right now, education is a key component, and developing more specific education that's likely to be helpful like this, I think, is valuable.
Well, and we highlighted them as last week's only Essential articles was Essentials working with S&P Global to train their 35,000 employees here. Let me try to make a case for Essential and see if the so I mean, one thing I think the AI leader needs to understand is that these tools are incredible. As John reminds us, power tools. They're increasing 20 to 40% task productivity. You have 10 to 15,000 employees that all would benefit from this. You're getting organizational resistance back because no one owns the training budget, only corporate budget for compliance. But we know that once people start learning this, you increase employee retention, you increase ability to attract talent. You absolutely start driving more organizational productivity here. Once people start learning the productivity, then they start seeing more opportunities for it to go forward here. And this is a thoughtful approach on how the thing. And one of the things that John, that's really resonating, and WEX is a company, WEX, that's we've worked with, and they now have 20% of their 6,000 employees have gone through instructor-led Gen AI training. And they are starting to get, in my view, getting to a tipping point where they're moving from novelty to norm, from parlor trip to this is actually part of the norm. This is part of how we think about business every day. This is how we really have thousands of employees remembering to use the robots or co-intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. I'm persuaded because, my reaction to this article is I'm going to send this around to all my executives.
That's Jim. That's exactly.
I'm going to send this article around, make everybody read it. So
yeah, I mean that's part of it. I think part of it. I think I'm learning is part of the AI leader's role is to help keep the CEO and the board focused on the right bullseye, and I think part of that is also doing the internal education. And I think,
absolutely.
All right, so essential. I got the group to go up there without using the chalk. So next article, please, Ankash.
The next comes from Boston Consulting Group, and it talks about how we can't scale Gen AI without responsible AI.
John Spielk, I know you have no sleep. I can't wait to hear your feedback on it. I think this article, who was assigned this article? This was Tim.
I'm on between important and optional. The optional side of me is this doesn't actually say anything. At the end of the day, it's a lot of framework. It's great management consulting buzzword stuff, but it doesn't actually deal with any of the real issues like make guardrails. Okay, but how do you really make guardrails? And to their defense, there is a little bit of a chart, but still at the end of the day, it just says make guardrails. It doesn't really say, how do I make guardrails to test for toxicity and bias, which is the really hard stuff, right?
Yeah.
How do I make it monitor this continuously? So on the other side, it is a good overarching framework. So again, for somebody who's looking for frameworks and ways to organize things, not bad. Covers a lot of the basics. It's a little below the level of the sort of CEO board level stuff. But it is, for the AI leader, I think, not a bad level. So I'm okay with either optional or important. I don't mind frameworks because they help you organize your thinking if you have a blank sheet of paper. But this one is a high level framework. There's still a lot left to be done after you get through this.
Yeah, I put it as optional for the reason, because it's a great marketing piece. Presents a framework, says there's lots of challenges. Ankash, if you scroll down, there's a table with challenges at each step of this process. But the only way to deal with them is to turn to BCG.
Right.
So that's what they're suggesting, right? So for me, it was optional. But I agree, if somebody is looking at the blank sheet of paper, that may be interesting to me.
I'm echoing my inner John Spielk. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I definitely optional for me. I might mince words with you, Luda. I don't think it's a great marketing piece. I think it's a check the box thing. I mean, I think like one time when I was running marketing at PwC, I used to hold up a beautiful piece by McKinsey that had this thing about data analytics, which basically said companies that differentially, that the first part of it said there's tons of data coming. Second part was an economic analysis that said companies that differentially apply data have better economic returns. Third piece was, hey, there's not enough talent to do this. That to me is a beautiful marketing piece, right? Trend, impact on your business, you need talent. This thing is, whatever. I hope the robots created it because, I think the robots would do a better job actually if you just took the robots and had them do this. So let's create a new category: worse than the average robot, and I would say that's where
stinging criticism. I think, John, I still I really get frustrated. And this is my, I guess, older age. I mean, the title. I mean, if I pull my inner John Svioka, if we go back to the title on Kaj, what's the opposite of this? Let's all do irresponsible AI.
right.
Let's make sure we have non ROI driven AOI. Let's make sure we have non secure projects here. So I think the question isn't responsibility. The question is, what's the right trade offs and how to think through that. And
Yes. Reminds
Just
me
a
of
quick.
road signs, like those road signs that always say pass with care. I always wanted to see a road sign that said pass with abandoned.
Go for it, right? Go for it. Act
go
like a
for
lot
it.
of no. The quick anecdote. One time when I was a lot younger and I was teaching at Harvard Business School, there was a woman who opened up a marketing case and she just did a phenomenal job, analysis and the whole routine, and just and so then somebody in the class was just trying to get a chip shot in and basically said, well, you know, Andrea's analysis, makes sense, but we have to make sure that it's in alignment with our corporate goals and doesn't hurt our values and so forth. And I looked at him, I said, well, Mr. William, I said, the opposite of what you just said is nonsensical. Therefore, it has no content. Do you mind sharing some analysis with us? Anyway, the
And Tim, that poor student still remembers that today, 30 years later.
I hope so.
All right. So optional. Next one on, Kaj, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Hong Kong, and it talks about how Hong Kong's central banking institution, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, has launched a Gen AI sandbox for finance sector.
Yeah. Luda, what do you think?
I rated it as optional, but it's a fascinating effort in Hong Kong where the government, the private sector is uniting in creating that essentially resource for all of the banks to look at how they apply AI, protect them, with use cases to run on in other places until they're perfected, share best practices. I think this is a great effort to do that, and it's like Paul private public partnership here in really good example. So I was very impressed by that, but for AI leader, that's I think optional.
Luda, yeah, I think that came to my mind as well. For people who don't know, I'm involved in something called AI Blueprint for Massachusetts, which is a public-private partnership for the Massachusetts state of Boston and the state of Massachusetts, and that's pulling together. And this whole notion that we're seeing one or two people pull together almost initiatives or learning things, either at a regional level or industry level here. One of the presentations I was at yesterday, the AI leader is talking about how internally he does a bi-weekly, basically learning lab every 2 weeks, and it's wildly successful inside his company here. So this notion that you organizing by industry, by region, by company, pulling together Gen AI enthusiasts, and in this case, actually doing tools, I think is a fascinating trend. And it's got a lot of momentum in a lot of different sectors all around the world. So it's very exciting. But optional sounds like it.
Yeah, I think I'd give it an optional just because it's not much of an article. If it was a little more, if it had more to it, I would give it important because I think the idea of the bureaucracy overseeing anything, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, banking, health and safety. I think this is a really smart way. The future of government, I think, is going to be these models. And, I know Project 2025 here in the U.S. wants to, whatever, dismantle the administrative state. I would go the other way, which is I'd like to automate the administrative state. And, this I think is going to both give the government tremendous amount of information about what activity is going on, as well as I think make it more productive in terms of putting it. When you look at some of the things underneath, they're looking at things like different hacking activities and fraud and so forth. I think it's a great beginning.
Well, and John, to that point, I mean, if at the end of the day, if every website out there is basically a mini effort towards, kind of search retrieval knowledge thing here, then every government interaction starts with a citizen having a query that needs to get an answer from it. And
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the time now and so forth, but I think in the future, the creation and application of regulation and law will be a conversation among and between citizens and the models. And law will be a dialogue between what is legislated and what those models are. I wouldn't be surprised to find that actually in the not too distant future, laws will actually be models.
right.
You know,
And I think
Right?
was
and
that?
we're,
That's Larry Lessig's thesis from 30 years ago. Code and other laws of cyberspace, right?
I did. Yeah, I never read Code. I bought it, and it's one of those books on my shelf that I always feel guilty when I look at it.
Yeah. But the idea is that, yeah, anyway, I agree. I think the only thing I would add is if you're in the finance, especially the global finance industry, I think this is essential because you got a Hong Kong office and you should be participating.
yeah. Well, what are the interesting things, Tim, though, if we're looking at, say, financial services, 2 or 3 years from now, they're going to have what, X percent, maybe 20% of their customer interactions on basic customer service going to be LL driven in a probabilistic based world. The same thing's going to happen over time with government as well.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm a believer. You know, again, I think one of the best examples here in Massachusetts is the pharma research, which 30 years ago was non-existent,
Yep.
and San Diego and South San Francisco completely dominated, and Massachusetts took it seriously, and here we are 30 years later with very robust research centers of every major biotech and pharmaceutical company.
It's also a recognition by Hong Kong that they, as a government, could not do it, could not provide effective tools and monitoring for risk management, fraud, and all of those. So they said, okay, what's the best way? Let's give them tools, let's give them support. I think this is very ingenious.
Well, it is semi-government, right? It's being done by, effectively, as I understand it, the Federal Reserve. So it sort of is a government thing.
Right, it is a government thing, but they are providing resources versus we are concerned about.
I think this is one of the best things government can do is provide resources like this. Sandbox is a great thing for government to be doing.
Yeah.
So as the IT insurance guy notes, if Hong Kong doesn't do it, Singapore may. Let's go ahead and wrap up, Ankaj. I know we're over time today. Do you have the summary by chance?
So Paul, skipping the last article. Okay.
I was going to skip the last one. Lou, did you want to cover it?
That's fine.
Okay, I was just skipping in terms of time. We're at 30.
Yeah, just bringing up my screen, Paul.
Okay. Yeah, and then folks, as we're waiting here, I just finished up. I'm in Vegas, or I was in Vegas. I'm in San Francisco now, but just 2.5 days at this AI4 conference. They advertised 4,000 attendees. There was at least 4,000, might have been 5,000. 120 vendors. It was an unbelievable amount of energy and activity. Everyone's telling me this show was 2 to 3 times larger this year than last year, and it's probably going to be double again next year. So this market is really moving. Incredibly confused though on the vendor side. It was stunning to walk through 20 and 30 vendors and get feedback. But from today, we have one essential article: Enterprise Gen AI at Work. Encourage AI leaders to read that and share it with their colleagues and the management team, CEOs, and leaders and boards, and several important articles. So thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.